Hello. Um, it is super late, and I have been trying to record this for well over 30 minutes with my professional microphone. Um, it's just like a BlueYeti that I got during the pandemic, um, and everything about it is like frustrating me to no end. So I was like, you know what? Let me just use the tools that I have, and we're gonna be using this mic, and I'm hoping it will sound decent enough going forward until I can figure out how to get this mic to work the way I want it to. But it's been a week since I've posted my last video, and I remember in that one saying that I wanted to be more intentional about posting more videos. I think I literally said in the video that I was going to try to post like 2 videos a week. That's not happening. And that is mostly because I got a part time job as a barista, or at least a barista in training. Um, Today was the last day of my training where I was like off site at the company headquarters with like four other people, um, also training in like different locations. And it was a really interesting experience, which I feel is like what I'm wanting to talk about today, um, which is like failure, and messing up and not being great at something. Um, I'm one of those people that definitely suffers from the cliche like former gifted children syndrome or whatever they call it. But the idea being that when you were very young, a lot of people would praise me about how smart I was and how, understanding and, all these different kinds of things that you cling on to as a young child, and, you know, you yearn for that type of affirmation again, because things just came, like, seemingly came so natural to you in certain aspects. And as you get older and life gets more just real, I guess, those things are not as easily attainable. And there is a burnout that happens with a lot of people, to where they're like, this is not what it felt like when I was young, and I don't know what to do. And so I'm just kind of stagnant and not knowing what to do. Um, and I have spent a lot of my life, kind of like that, where because I was told really great things about like my writing, for example, when I was young. I mean, my family had literally given me the label of like I'm the family writer. You know what I mean? Like nobody else, had a way with words the way I did, and I I was clinging to that identity, for so long that when I experienced my first like bout with writer's block, or just writing something that maybe I wasn't entirely proud of, it suddenly the walls quickly crumble down, and I feel like exposed in a weird way. You know what I mean? Where I feel, well, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, or you know, and that line of thinking can so easily trickle down into other aspects of your life, to where you start comparing yourself to other people, and you start, judging yourself way too harshly for mistakes that you more than likely would not pass that same judgment off onto other people, but because it's you, you do it a lot. And with getting this job as a barista, I've never done anything like this before. You know what I mean? I've worked in the food industry, or food service industry rather, excuse me, for like a decade. Which does not make me feel very good. It does feel very unk coded, to say that I've spent a decade in the food service industry, but I've never done like a barista type job. You know what I mean? I feel like it kind of feels silly being one now that I am like 29, and I don't know. It kind of feels like something that you're like, oh, you all had a barista phase when you were like, in your early 20s, or when you were in like high school or something. But it's happening for me now, and I think it has to, or how do I say it? It feels as though this is how it had to have happened at this time in my life, because I needed it, you know? And I say that because the training process has been really, it's been a lot tougher than I was expecting it to be. Um, there's a lot of elements to coffee that I'm ignorant of because I've never had, this type of job before. So like steaming milk, pulling espresso shots, trying to figure out how, to get the proper temperatures and make sure that I'm constructing drinks right, and being mindful of, the foam I have in, my steamed milk, things of that nature, which there's just so much that goes into making coffee, that I was not immediately good at being a barista, you know. Over the 3 days, they kind of taught us the basics, and today was our sort of, they call it a bar assessment, and I had to basically make a series of drinks and present them to my trainer and be like, this is what I made. And I failed, which I feel like I couldn't have been more grateful for, to hear, because if I had heard this, if I was experiencing this, even like just 5 years ago, you know what I mean? I think it would have devastated me. I would have been so embarrassed. I would have felt so insecure about not being great at it that I'm like, I'm just an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I should just quit while I'm ahead. And more than likely, I probably would have quit. It would have felt so disheartening to have been like, why am I not picking up on this immediately? Why am I not great at this? Because on the surface level, like, I understand the concepts. I understand what is required of me, in terms of what I need to do in order to achieve the results I want. It's just putting them into practice. I'm rusty, I'm not great at it. I kept steaming my milks really colder than they needed to be, and the foam was not the consistency that it was needing for certain drinks. I literally kept just making lattes, and I did not mean to. That's just how it happened. And I failed. But I failed at like the threshold between failure and passing. And there's something about that where I was able to, look at the bright side of it, being like, I failed, but I was right there for improvement, and even my trainer had said the same thing. It's like, you just are under that threshold from passing, and passing isn't even really, it's all arbitrary, because all it means is that I'm gonna have to train more when I'm like at the specific like cafe that I'm going to be at. It's not like I'm having to restart training, or I'm gonna have to whatever. It's just they gave notes to my manager about what I need to improve on and work on, but I still have the job, you know what I mean? And I think it's funny when we look at failure, or not succeeding immediately at something or excelling at something, that aspect of the failure seems so much bigger and like frightening in our minds, where I was overthinking it all day, and somewhere in the back of my mind thinking was like, well, if I mess this up, then they might just fire me, you know what I mean? But that was not the case. It's like I already had the job. This was just seeing where I was at, and that was it. There was no more thought required into this thing. But again, we make it so much bigger in our heads, what that failure means for us and for our identity that we try to hold on to and curate. And you just gotta let it go, like I had talked about last week, me tripping and falling while I was on a run, which in any other point in my life I think would have been extremely embarrassing and disheartening. I would have just given up right then and there and been like, I'm just gonna walk home in shame, because I tripped. it was very similar here, where I was not doing great. Everyone around me was seemingly doing really well and was catching on to things. And from what I understand, I think they passed, you know, as you know, relative as that term is, in the circumstance of what we were doing. Um, I didn't feel embarrassed, you know. I didn't feel ashamed. It felt calming just to kind of let it be. That I'm like, okay, I'm not where I want to be, but there's a lot of room for improvement to where I can get to where I want to be, and that's kind of nice, you know. And it's funny because during this training, one of the girls that was also, training alongside me, um, we were just all talking with our trainer, getting to know each other, and they had mentioned that they were, one, a philosophy major, and two, that they were reading the brothers Karamazov. And again, I don't want to, I probably butchered that, and even the author, which is Dostoevsky. um, I could pick out that name in like a lineup of writers, you know what I mean? But like, I'm not some philosophy major, and I'm not deeply in tune with that world, or, the greats of that world. Um, but just in passing, while she was explaining the book, she was talking about how a lot of the characters, the whole point of the book is that these characters are sort of broken down, because that's sort of Dostoevsky's philosophy, is that in order to grow or to be great, you need to be broken down and brought to nothing, you know. And from that point, from the bottom, only then are you able to fully like rise. You know what I mean? And again, it was such a nothing conversation for all of us. We were just kind of chatting about what we were, reading, or, what we're into. But that was day one, and that it's something that sticks with you. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's only in hindsight that you can kind of understand it, to where when you finally allow yourself to like let go and be at the mercy of the world, God, whatever name you give this flow that the universe has, you know what I mean? When you relent to it, it responds in kind, you know what I mean? And it's like little things like that you start to pick up on, that seemingly affirm where you're at in life, or what your next step might be. And even just hearing that, where I'm really glad that I have this barista job, and I'm really glad that I'm going to be able to kind of have a goal to work towards something now, in a career that I've been, I don't want to say career, but I've been working in the food service industry for this long, and this is like another feather in that cap, being a barista. And I don't know, it's just one of those things to where it's nice to hear, because it makes you feel like you're kind of on the right track, you know what I mean? That God is kind of putting these things for you to hear every so often, to be like, it's all right, and things are going to be all right, you know what I mean? Because it is tough, you know what I mean? I'm still having days where I can feel down on myself and feel like I don't really know how things are going to turn out. And I mean that not just on like a personal level, but also like a global level, you know what I mean? Like, the world is just increasingly getting scarier and scarier. And it can be nerve-wracking trying to navigate the horrors of what feel like the end of the world with personal growth. But I don't know. It was just really nice to hear that. That this is probably where I'm at. You know what I mean? I'm at the bottom for me, and the only place to go is up. And I find that really comforting. And yeah, I don't know. It's been an interesting time, and it's kind of cool being able to kind of look back and reflect on that, reflect on how you don't often see change all at once. You know what I mean? It's in these little fragments of like, well, yeah, if this had happened to me, however long ago, I would have probably handled that a very different way, and even just like a year ago, I was in a similar position where I had just gotten another part-time job, and it was very different from what I had done before, and at the time I just couldn't do it. You know what I mean? I quit, and that in and of itself is crazy because I'd only ever quit one job before that, and that was when I was like my early 20s, and it was because my manager was like being racist, you know, and had said a racist remark to me and my coworkers, and I had never quit a job before then. I'd always saw it out, or saw it through, at least put my 2 weeks in. And with that job that I had a year ago, I gave up, because it was really difficult, and I wasn't really apt for taking on everything that job was requiring of me. And now I'm in a place where that sort of same thing is happening, where I'm a little nervous about what this might entail for me, because it is a part-time job, and I'm still at my current job now, at this Mexican restaurant, and I'm going to be pulling a lot of doubles, for working early in the morning at the coffee shop, and then having some hours in between, and then closing at the restaurant. And I can already mentally like visualize what that is going to look like, and even kind of feel a little bit of how that might feel and how tired I might be. But I don't feel as afraid as I felt maybe like a year ago, and that's really nice and comforting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, and not even to say I guess, it's like things are always going to work out, and I think the more you allow yourself to accept that truth and accept that no matter what may come your way, things are going to get better because they have to by nature. The rain can only last so long. The night has to end at some point. And that doesn't always mean that you forget, you know what I mean, or you just move on past it. I'm in a very particular spot myself, with the breakup that I'm still experiencing, and just how I feel about that on a personal level. It's not like it's not like I'm trying to move on from it, but I'm trying to actually do the work that is required of becoming better, of being the person that I want to be, and allowing that to come true. But, I'm still very much every day going through it and feeling the weight of losing a person. And, kind of, not even kind of, just really wanting that back. And not really knowing where to put those feelings. But, yeah. Anyway, I feel like that we're at like 19 minutes, so that's enough rambling before I like start really going on. But yeah, it's nice. I think things are really, starting to feel, I don't know. I had a thought and I didn't know how to finish it, but I'm starting to feel the change, and it feels like it's starting to show itself in my life a little more like tangibly, and that's always a nice feeling. So I hope you are also doing well wherever you are and whatever you may be going through. I hope you know that I believe in you and that things are going to be okay. You just gotta hold on to hope and allow yourself to just be at the mercy of the flow of the world, and I think in time you'll start to see that God or the universe, can, whatever you want to call it, will start to affirm those things for you in your life, and it'll be good. So know that you're not alone, know that you're cared for and you're loved, and I'll talk to you later.